Level 1, the enlistee. You're 18. You signed the paper yourself. Nobody forced your hand. You believed in something, or maybe you just believed that staying home was worse than leaving it. Either way, the ink is dry. 3 days after your enlistment, you're on a bus to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. It's 1968. The Vietnam War is not on television anymore. It's in your orders. Basic combat training is 8 weeks. You already knew how to run. You didn't know how to run while someone screamed that you were going to get your entire unit killed. That part is new. You're assigned 68 Whiskey, combat medic. Some guys wanted infantry, some wanted armor. You wanted to help people live. That felt simple when you wrote it down. It feels less simple now. The first week, you learn how to make a bed so tight a quarter bounces off it. The second week, you learn how to field strip an M16 in under a minute in the dark. The third week, they hand you a tourniquet and a plastic dummy with a hole in its thigh, and they say, "Stop the bleeding. You have 90 seconds. Go." You stop it in 83. Your drill sergeant says nothing. He just moves on to the next man. You learn quickly. No applause here. Just the absence of failure. At night, the barracks smell like boot polish and sweat. 22 men in one room. Some of them snore. Some of them pray. One guy from Macon, Georgia, cries every night for the first 2 weeks. By week 3, he stops. You don't know if that's strength or something worse. You write a letter home. You say you're doing fine. You say the food is decent. You say you'll be home before they know it. You don't mention that you now know exactly how many seconds it takes for a man to bleed out from a femoral artery wound. 4 minutes, sometimes less. You finish training. You're no longer a civilian with good intentions. You're a combat medic. And somewhere, a jungle is already waiting. Level 2, the field medic. You're 19. You're in Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam, and the heat is a living thing. It sits on your chest. It follows you through the elephant grass. It doesn't care about your training or your good intentions. Your unit is 12 men. You are their only medic. They call you Doc. Not your name, Doc. You learn quickly that this is not a nickname. It's a contract. Your aid bag weighs 14 kilograms. Morphine syrettes, plasma expanders, battle dressings, chest seals, a surgical airway kit, and enough tape to wrap a car. You never put it down. Not at chow, not when you sleep. Not during the 2 minutes of radio silence every morning when command checks your grid position. The first time someone is hit, it happens faster than you were trained for. You're moving through a tree line when the crack of small arms fire breaks open the morning. A rifleman named Corporal Dale Hutchins drops 3 meters to your left. He's hit in the shoulder. Clean through. You're beside him before the shooting stops. You don't think. You move. Compress. Check the exit wound. No arterial spray. Pack the entry. Check his airway. He's screaming, which means he's breathing, which means he's alive, which means you're doing your job. You get him stable. The medevac arrives 19 minutes later. Hutchins goes home. You stay. The second time someone is hit, it's worse. A landmine on a trail you walked yesterday without incident. 2 men down. One loses a foot. One has shrapnel in his abdomen. You have 2 hands, 1 aid bag, and no one else coming for 6 minutes. You make decisions you were never taught how to make. You choose who gets the morphine first. You choose who gets the pressure bandage while the other one waits. You choose. That night, lying in your hooch, you replay every second of it. Not because you think you failed, because you need to know, with absolute certainty, that you didn't. Both men survive. You do not celebrate. There's no time for that. Tomorrow, the unit moves north. You pick up your bag. Level 3, the senior medic. You're 23. You've been in country for 11 months. You've treated more wounds than you can count. Gunshots, or blast injuries, heat stroke, malaria, infected lacerations, a broken femur from a fall during a night patrol. Once, a snake bite. Once, a man who had gone 4 days without water. You are no longer the youngest medic in the battalion. There are 2 new ones now. Specialist Ray Okubo from Portland and Private First Class Thomas Ease from Baltimore. They look at you the way you used to look at the older guys. Wide-eyed, listening hard. You don't tell them it gets easier. Because it doesn't. You tell them it gets cleaner. Your hands shake less. Your decisions come faster. The difference between panic and calm is just repetition. You run their training. You drill them on tourniquet placement until they can do it in the dark. You make them practice needle chest decompression on a rubber torso until they stop hesitating. Hesitation costs seconds. Seconds cost lives. You have said this so many times, it has become its own kind of prayer. One morning, Okubo freezes during a contact. A private is hit. Okubo stands still for 3 seconds. 3 full seconds. You push past him and take the casualty yourself. Later, you don't yell at him. You sit with him. You ask him what he saw in those 3 seconds. He says he saw himself lying there instead. You nod. You tell him that's not something training removes. It's something experience overrides. And the only way to build the override is to keep going. He becomes a solid medic. You write that in your after-action notes. Your platoon leader puts you in for a commendation. You accept it without ceremony. There's a ceremony. You stand still while someone pins something to your chest. You're already thinking about the resupply that's 3 days late and whether the plasma in your bag is still within temperature. You are good at this. That is not pride. That is fact. And it is the most complicated feeling you have ever carried. Before we go further, if you've made it this far, comment what you want next. Hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We upload every single day. Level 4, the Medic Sergeant. You're 27. The war is over. You came home in 1972 and stood in an airport in California and nobody met your eyes. That's the part they don't put in the recruitment posters. You were 22 years old and you had kept men alive in conditions that most people will never see. And a woman in the terminal looked at your uniform and looked away. You re-enlist anyway. Not because you have nowhere else to go, though that's part of it. Because the only place your skill makes complete sense is inside a uniform. You're stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. You're a sergeant now. You run the medical section of an infantry company. 5 medics under your direct supervision. You write their training schedules, evaluate their field performance, and sign off on their readiness reports. The Cold War hums in the background. Europe is where the next war is supposed to happen. Armored columns punching through the Fulda Gap, mass casualty events, chemical agents. The medical doctrine is changing. Triage protocols are being rewritten. MASH units are being reorganized. Everything you learned in the jungle is being stress tested for a different kind of battlefield. You adapt. That's what you do. Your medics are younger than you were in Vietnam, smarter in some ways, less ready in others. They've trained in classrooms. You trained in rice paddies. You don't hold it against them. You just know what the classroom leaves out. There is a young specialist in your section, a woman named Corporal Angela Reyes from Albuquerque. She is technically precise, methodically calm, and 3 times better with a surgical airway than any medic you trained in country. She will be an exceptional combat medic if the Army gives her the chance. The Army is not sure it wants to give her the chance. You write in every evaluation, deploy her, she is ready. No one listens. Not yet, but you keep writing it. One evening, a training accident. A Humvee rolls during a night navigation exercise. 2 men trapped, one with a suspected spinal injury, one with a compound fracture of the tibia. Your medics respond. You watch from 12 meters back. You don't intervene. They handle it correctly. Every step, every decision. You let them have that. A good sergeant doesn't just build competence. He builds confidence. Confidence is what holds when the competence is tested under fire. Level 5, the physician assistant. You're 31. You went back to school. 18 months of inter-service physician assistant program at Fort Medic, and now you hold a commission. You are no longer Sergeant Calloway. You are Captain Calloway. The men still call you Doc. You work in a Role 2 medical facility. That's the next level of care above the foxhole. A forward surgical capability that can handle damage control surgery, blood transfusions, emergency stabilization before evacuation. It is 1985. You are deployed to West Germany as part of NATO's forward presence. You treat training injuries mostly. Twisted ankles, lacerated hands, one case of appendicitis that you catch early enough to save a young private from a rupture. Some nights it's quiet. Some nights you're grateful for that. But you understand what the facility is for. You understand that if the tanks roll through the Fulda Gap, this building, this collection of tents and generators and folding surgical tables, is the last thing standing between a wounded soldier and death. You run drills at 0300, not because command orders it, because you order it. Because the difference between a team that has practiced a mass casualty event 50 times and a team that has practiced it 10 times is visible in the first 30 seconds of a real one. Your staff resents it sometimes. They're tired. You understand tired. You were tired in a jungle at 19 years old with 14 kilograms on your back and no one was coming for 6 minutes. You tell them this once. Just once. You don't repeat it. Either it lands or it doesn't. It lands. One of your nurses, Lieutenant Harris, stays late to revise the triage protocol after a drill goes slower than it should. He didn't ask for permission. He just did it. You read his revision at 0600 with a cup of terrible coffee, and you incorporate every suggestion. Good ideas don't need rank. They need adoption. You sign the new protocol. Harris gets the credit in the unit log. He deserves it. This is what medicine in the military actually looks like most of the time. Not heroics. Preparation. Relentless, unglamorous, essential preparation. Level 6. The flight surgeon. You're 36. You completed medical school under the Health Professions Scholarship Program. You completed residency. You completed flight surgeon training at Fort Rucker, Alabama, where you learned how altitude affects the human body, how hypoxia deceives the mind, how a pilot at 15,000 feet can feel completely fine while making decisions that will kill him. You are now assigned to the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. You don't fly the missions. You keep the men who fly the missions alive. Your job is total human performance, sleep architecture, nutritional timing, cognitive load under stress, physiological limits of sustained operations. You review every pilot's medical record. You clear them for flight. You ground them when they aren't fit, even when they insist they are, especially when they insist they are. A warrant officer named Chief Darnell Briggs has been flying for 14 years. He is possibly the best helicopter pilot in the regiment. He also hasn't slept more than 4 hours a night for 3 weeks during the operational tempo of a classified deployment. He comes to you before a mission. He says he's fine. You look at his eyes. You check his reaction time. You ask him to track a moving light with his finger. He misses it by a quarter second. Twice. You ground him. He is furious. He uses words that would get a lesser man removed. You absorb it without expression. 2 days later, the mission completes without incident. Briggs sleeps for 11 hours. He comes back to your office. He doesn't apologize. He says, "I would have put us in the mountain." You nod. That's all. Your job is not to be thanked. Your job is to be right before anyone realizes they needed you to be. Level 7. The battalion surgeon. You're 42. It is 2003. You are in Iraq, attached to the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment, moving north from Kuwait. The war is 8 days old. Your role now is command and care simultaneously. You advise the battalion commander on medical readiness. You supervise all medical personnel in the unit. You make decisions about evacuation priority, asset allocation, and mass casualty management in real time. On the 4th day of the advance, Your convoy takes fire outside a city called An-Nasiriyah. 3 vehicles, 4 casualties, 2 urgent surgical, 1 priority, 1 routine. You have 1 forward surgical team, 1 medevac bird that is 22 minutes out, and a street that is still not secure. You do not panic. You triage in 40 seconds. Urgent surgical cases go to the forward team immediately. The priority case gets an IV line and a chest seal and a medic sitting on him. The routine case is conscious, angry about his ankle, and told firmly to sit still. You are everywhere and nowhere. You are watching your team, watching the street, watching the sky for the medevac. 22 minutes feels like 22 hours. The bird arrives. Both urgent surgical cases are alive. They will remain alive. They will go home. One of them will name his son after the medic who held pressure on his chest for 22 minutes without stopping. That night, after the debrief, after the reports, after the medical log is updated, you sit in a vehicle and you eat a cold MRE in the dark, and you don't think about anything for about 7 minutes. Then you stand up. The battalion moves at 0400. Level 8, the Medical Brigade Commander. You're 49. You command the 47th Combat Support Hospital. 800 personnel. Full surgical capability, intensive care, lab, radiology, blood bank. A city of medicine inside a fortified compound outside Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. You are responsible for the care of every wounded service member within your sector of responsibility. You are responsible for your staff's readiness, their morale, their safety, and their performance under conditions that would break most people who have never stood inside a trauma bay at 0200 with 4 casualties arriving simultaneously. The operational tempo in 2009 is relentless. Improvised explosive devices are the dominant threat. The wounds they produce are catastrophic. Multiple amputations, blast lung, traumatic brain injury stacked on hemorrhagic shock. Your surgeons are performing damage control operations around the clock. You don't operate anymore. That's not your role. Your role is to make sure everyone else can operate at their absolute best. You fight for resources. More blood products. Better evacuation coverage. A second surgical team rotation, so no surgeon goes beyond 14 hours without rest. You write requests that go up the chain and come back denied, and you rewrite them and send them again. One request takes 4 months. When it's approved, you don't celebrate. You implement it immediately. There is a young Army nurse in your hospital, Lieutenant Serena Okafor from Houston. She has been in the trauma bay for 7 months without a break. She is clinically exceptional. She is also fraying in ways that only you seem to notice. You order her out of the bay. 2 weeks of light duty. She pushes back hard. You tell her, a broken medic saves no one. She is the asset. Protecting the asset is your mission. She resists for a day. Then she sleeps for 14 hours straight. She comes back to the bay 2 weeks later, sharper than before. The hospital survival rate for urgent surgical cases during your command, 96.4%. You write that number in no report, but you carry it. Level 9, the Army Surgeon General Advisor. You're 54. You sit in rooms now that have no windows. Pentagon conference rooms with whiteboards and projectors, and men in suits who haven't held a scalpel in a decade. You are the senior medical advisor to the Army Surgeon General. Your job is policy, doctrine for forward surgical teams, blood product prepositioning guidelines, tactical combat casualty care curriculum reform, traumatic brain injury screening protocols. You shape how the Army thinks about medicine at the institutional level. Every decision affects thousands of people you will never meet. You sit in a briefing about updating the 68 whiskey training curriculum. The proposal removes a fieldcraft module to make room for more administrative training. It will save 6 hours of instruction time. You kill it, not politely, clearly. You explain to a room of people who have spent the last decade behind desks that fieldcraft is not optional for a combat medic. Fieldcraft is the difference between a medic who can perform and a medic who performs only in a classroom. You explain that the 6 hours they want to save are the 6 hours that might determine whether a kid from Macon, Georgia bleeds out in a ditch or walks home. The room is quiet. The module stays. There are moments in these rooms when you feel the full weight of the distance between here and a field in Quang Tri province. You are 54 years old and you are still fighting, just differently. The enemy in this room isn't enemy competence. It's institutional inertia, budget cycles, bureaucratic comfort. You fight it the same way you fought everything else. Calmly, with facts, without stopping. One evening, a young major stops you in the hallway. She was a medic in Kandahar. She says your advocacy for the preposition blood program saved her patient's life last year. You don't know her name. She doesn't expect you to. She thanks you and walks away. You stand in the hallway for a moment, then you go back to your office and prepare the next briefing. Level 10. The legacy. You're 60. You retired from active duty at 58. There was a ceremony. There was a folded flag. There were people who said words that were true, but somehow smaller than the thing they were trying to describe. You live outside San Antonio now, close enough to Fort Sam Houston that you can drive past the gate and remember being 18 years old on a bus with a shaved head and no idea what was coming. You consult. You teach at a medical school 2 days a week. You work with a non-profit that trains civilian trauma responders using military medicine principles. The same tourniquet technique you drilled in a jungle in 1968 is now in every police car, every school emergency kit, and every sporting venue with a first aid station in the country. You did not do that alone, but you were part of the chain that did it. There is a student in your class, a 22-year-old named Marcus Webb from Detroit. He wants to be a trauma surgeon. He is brilliant and impatient and asks questions that are sometimes better than your answers. He reminds you of a medic you trained in 1971 named Okubo, who used to freeze until he didn't. You don't tell Marcus Webb he reminds you of anyone. You just answer his questions carefully. You give him everything you have. Because that is the whole point. Every piece of knowledge you carry was given to you by someone who carried it first. The drill sergeant who taught you tourniquets. The surgeon who showed you chest decompression in a hospital basement after hours. The warrant officer you grounded who said, "I would have put us in the mountain." Every patient who survived because you were there. Every patient who didn't and taught you something you carried forward so the next one could. You were never just a medic. You were a link in a chain that stretched backward through every war this country ever fought and forward into every operating room and trauma bay and battlefield aid station that hasn't happened yet. Some links are forged in classrooms. Some are forged in jungles. Some are forged in hallways at the Pentagon, fighting for 6 hours of curriculum that nobody in a suit thought mattered. They all hold. The work was never about rank. The rank was just the shape the work took at each stage. The work was always the same. Stop the bleeding, keep them breathing, bring them home.